Hey there, my name is Chris Acton with Acton Creative, and this is a hand-woven experience. And in this episode, I'm going to answer the question, how many treadles do you actually need? So let's start at the top, shall we? What's a treadle? So I am sitting at the front of my floor loom. This is my beater bar. Here are my 4 shafts. Down below, I have a set of pedals that are called treadles. Now, these treadles are important because they are connected to my shafts and help me control when each one lifts and lowers. And on my loom here, I have 4 shafts, but I have 6 treadles down below. Now, it's pretty common to have a 4-shaft loom that either has 4 or has 6 treadles. Those are pretty standard combinations for this type of loom. But let's say that we want to do a pattern. We want to do a specific weaving pattern and it calls for more treadles than we have. What do you do? So let's wind it back and talk about how to look at a weaving draft so you can see where the challenge comes in. Now, if you have never looked at a weaving pattern draft before, I have a whole episode where I do a nice deep dive. So I have that link in the description and you can go check that out. But here is my kind of bird's eye view, my 30-second look at a pattern draft. Okay, so this is my favorite book in the whole wide world, the Ann Dixon Hand Weaver's Pattern Directory. So let's look at this option right here. This is a weaving draft. It's pretty, right? Now, a draft has 4 main components. We have this section at the top that's called the threading. And that refers to how your warp yarns are, the sequence that they go into the shafts. That's what your threading is, right? We have this section over here is called the treadling. This really has to do with which shafts lift and lower and how you're throwing your shuttle, right? These are your instructions for when you're putting the weft into the fabric. You always have some kind of image of the fabric. They're not always pretty in a color like this, but you always have some kind of graphic for what the pattern's going to look like. And then this section up here, it kind of looks like a crossword puzzle. This is your tie-up section. And here is where our treadles really fall under the spotlight for us. Now, Anne does something very cool in her book, is that on one page, she has 3 different options for us. So these are 3 completely different patterns that have a common threading, and then she includes all of the various tie-up options right here. But you don't need necessarily all of those to create just this one or this one. Like if you want to do them all in sequence, you absolutely could. But for now, I am doing this one right here. That's how the whole topic came up. I am doing this pattern right at the top, right? So I followed along my sweet little threading here. By the way, as you look at this bottom row is always shaft number 1, which is the one that's closest to you. It's just a little tidbit so you have some kind of orientation, right? Okay, so I did my little threading here and I went to go, because I'm doing this one, so I know that I need these combinations available to me. So I'm looking up here, and if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's 8 different tie-ups. Okay, now wait a minute. I only have 6 treadles. So does that mean I can't do this pattern? Thankfully, no is the answer. You can still do this pattern if you have less treadles than this, because I have yet to see a loom that has 4 shafts and have more than 6 treadles. So there's got to be a way to work around that, right? So let's talk about how we still create this pattern even though we don't have 8 different treadles to for actually treadling there. So I think the best way to do this is to actually go down below the loom, get up close and personal with the treadles, and I'll show you what I mean, how we can actually make this happen with fewer treadles than what they call for. All right, let's do it. Okay, here I am sitting down below the loom. It's me, the dust bunnies, and my treadles right here. Now, like I said before, I have a 4-shaft loom, yet I have 6 treadles. Now, that's a really nice feature that they started to do with looms, because then you have 4 that you can use for the pattern and you have 2 that you can dedicate to plain weave. And that's actually how I have mine set up right now. I like to do plain weave using the outside 2 treadles. So this treadle over here on my far left, lifts shafts 1 and 3, and this one over here lifts shaft 2 and 4. Now, this is all personal opinion. You can change where those are located. You can make all kinds of modifications. However, I'm just going to kind of show you what I have, and then you can decide what works for you and your loom. Okay, so in between my kind of tabby or plain weave treadles, what I've done is that I have connected one treadle to just one shaft. So this one right here is going to lift shaft number 1. Can you see it lift right there? That's the one that's closest to me, shaft number 1. So this treadle lifts shaft number 1. The one next to it, shaft number 2. You get the idea. They're all tied up individually just to one shaft, very much like a direct tie-up loom where that is your only option. However, here's what this allows me to do. Let's look back at our draft. So here's our draft that we're working with, right? And this section right here, one at a time, right? If you follow, let's say we'll take this box right here, we'll follow it all the way up, follow it up, up, that's shaft number 4. So when you see this square, yellow square in this position, that means you need to lift shaft number 4. If you go over, we'll follow it up, that's shaft number 3, number 2, number 1. You get the idea. So this whole section is all singles. Great, we have the loom set up for that. But what about this section here? You take this one, right? We follow it all the way up. It says I need to lift shafts 1 and 2. Well, we can just 2-foot it, right? We can simply put both feet or 1 foot on both treadles, and we can actually just depress those 2 treadles together, which will achieve the result that we want. So anytime that we need to have 2 shafts lift at the same time, either both feet, get them in the action, or if they're close enough together, 1 foot, kind of angle it so you can lift 2 at the same time, right? So what you find when you run into a draft that has all kinds of tie-up options is your goal, number 1, is to simplify it. How can you break it down into smaller parts that you can do a little kind of combining action so you can still achieve this result that you want without needing to go out and construct a few more treadles for your loom, since you don't need to do that. So that is the answer to the question, how many treadles do you actually need? You don't actually need that many. Really, you can do it with 4. Anytime, any place. That's why I always like to say that anything you could do on a floor loom, you could do on a table loom. You just need one way to lift and lower all of the shafts that you have. That's really it. So when you bump up against a pattern that calls for a whole bunch of different tie-ups, don't sweat it. Take a breath and look at, how can I break this down? How can I simplify this and then use both feet, or work out the positioning so it's easier so you can lift and lower those shafts in the way that you need to. Because at the end of the day, no one's watching you do this. So your only goal is to make sure that you're lifting 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3, and then 3 and 4. So you can achieve this result. How you get there, that's all up to you. So simplify. That's really the answer here. So if you run into a draft that seems really complicated, but you're like, okay, but wait, this is a 4-shaft draft and I have 4 shafts, you can do it. Don't even worry about how many treadles you have. You can figure it out. All right, my friend. I hope that gave you something to chew on, and hopefully it opened up a whole new world of other drafts that you can tackle, because it doesn't matter how many treadles you have, you can do it. All right, my friend. Have a great week. Happy weaving.